Hello, my name is Alexander Vasenka, and in this video I will be making a cushioned chair. Right here I am cutting a template for my legs and the back of my chair so that everything is at the right angle. You'll see more of this later. I used a lot of found materials for this build. That includes an old bent bed frame. Just set up my metal cutting bandsaw on a stand to cut everything down to size for the frame of the chair. Here I am marking notches on parts of the frame so I know what to cut in order to fit each piece together. You can see my strap of my protective goggles in the way. Now I am putting the frame together, making sure everything fits together correctly, and I realized that I had measured incorrectly, but luckily the measurements of the frame still worked out well. Next I used some more heavy-duty pieces of metal for the legs. I needed to cut each piece at a slight angle so the legs were at a slight angle themselves. And I started grinding everything, getting everything ready for welding. Just using an 80 grit flap disc right here. Next I could start setting up the pieces for their welds. I used a square and some clamps to make sure everything was at perfect 90 degrees to each other. I'm pretty new at welding, so this was a lot of good practice. In order to connect the back at a slight angle to the base of the chair, I needed to cut one of these angle pieces in half to make a correctly angled piece of support. You'll see this a bit later. There's that back at that angle, and I'm using the template I cut earlier in the video to make sure everything was at the right angle. Just cutting out some notches here for the back of the frame. The shop that I'm in has a lot of wood in it, and so I'm being very careful as to where sparks are falling, making sure nothing's catching on fire. There's a lot of sacrificial wood underneath things to make sure I'm not scorching anything important as well. And here I started to grind everything down and make things look pretty. The back support that I cut earlier had a bit of a gap in between it, so I filled that up with a fat weld and then grinded everything down to shape. Next, I started the cushions for the chair. I had an idea for upholstery that seemed pretty quick with good results, and this was an experiment in that. Started off with a thick piece of plywood, something that would give a lot of rigidity to the whole piece. And the frame came out very stable, which I was very happy about. I had some old bed padding at home, which I decided to use for the cushions of the chair, and this cut really easy with a utility blade, so this worked out well. Here's the fabric I'm used for the cushions. I just cut it to size using the padding and a piece of plywood as a template. I usually look online at how people use certain techniques to accomplish things like upholstery when I'm interested, but in this case I just thought about what might work and went ahead and tried it, and it worked pretty well. It's a little messy, but it could be hidden within the frame. And here I'm putting a base coat of primer on the frame. I wanted to protect it from rust, and this is auto body paint, so I thought it would do a good job with that. And then I put a layer of black paint on top of that once everything had dried. I drilled some pilot holes and then enlarged them for screws that I'll use to hold the cushions onto the chair. Since nothing was hardened, none of the steel was hardened, this was a simple task to do. I used some scrap fabric to cover the remaining bits of plywood that were showing. I knew most of this would be facing towards the wall or the floor, so I wasn't too worried about how it looked. I signed the piece and put a coat of polyurethane on the frame to protect the paint from scratches and whatnot. Finally, I took some more fabric and I made a little pillow for the chair just because I thought it needed something else and a little more padding as well. Got to put everything together, which always feels good. And I realized that the hole I made to stuff the pillow was too small, so I opened it up and then took some other fluff I had from a different pillow and sewed the whole thing up. It's actually pretty comfortable.